If you think your money problems are bad, imagine burning an entire city and then bankrupting one of the richest empires in history. That's exactly what Nero, Rome's most infamous emperor, did. But his downfall wasn't just about madness. It was about money. Wasted, burned, and drained until even the mighty Roman treasury begged for mercy. He was an artist, a showman, and a monster in one golden crown. But behind the music and murders was a man obsessed with spending, lavish games, gold-plated palaces, rivers of wine, and oceans of debt. Nero didn't just crash the economy, he set it on fire. This video explores 10 sinister ways Nero bankrupted his own empire, each one more shocking than the last. And by the end, you'll realize even the most powerful man on earth couldn't escape the price of greed. Before we dive in, just a quick ask. These videos take a lot of time, research, and care to create. If you're enjoying the journey through these forgotten corners of history, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. It doesn't cost you anything, but it means everything to the channel and helps keep these stories alive. Thank you so much. Nero wasn't just an emperor. He believed he was an artist, and not just any artist, but the greatest actor, poet, singer, and charioteer the world had ever seen. The problem? Rome didn't need a celebrity, it needed a ruler. Instead of focusing on laws or leading his armies, Nero poured public money into theatrical festivals that centered around himself. He built enormous theaters, hired thousands of performers, and forced senators to sit through hours of his performances, under threat of death if they left early or fell asleep. But the cost wasn't just boredom. These shows drained Rome's finances. Huge sums went to stage productions, costumes, and imported animals. Nero even paused government work so people could attend his concerts. Farmers, soldiers, and builders were pulled from their jobs just to clap for him. Productivity plummeted, but taxes didn't stop. And when the people didn't cheer loud enough, Nero raised spending to make the shows even more outrageous. One event featured a massive artificial lake with ships reenacting sea battles, all built in the middle of Rome, just for entertainment. This wasn't harmless fun. Nero's obsession with performance led to massive public debt. Gold coins were melted for props, grain shipments were delayed, the empire was bleeding, and Nero was too busy rehearsing his lines to notice. He believed applause was worth more than gold. But in the end, all that clapping couldn't stop the empire from collapsing. In 64 AD, a massive fire ravaged Rome. 10 of the city's 14 districts were reduced to ash. People were left homeless, temples destroyed, and businesses lost forever. While most Romans mourned, Nero saw opportunity. Instead of rebuilding Rome for the people, Nero used the devastation as an excuse to create a personal playground. He cleared out what remained of the burned neighborhoods and began constructing a lavish palace called the Domus Aurea, the Golden House. Stretching over 200 acres, it included a man-made lake, rotating dining rooms, fountains flowing with perfume, and walls covered in gold leaf and gems. The cost? Enormous. Rome's treasury, already struggling, was gutted to fund Nero's dream mansion. He raised taxes on provinces, seized land from nobles, and devalued Roman currency by reducing the silver content in coins, one of the first signs of financial collapse in the empire's history. While Nero dined beneath ivory ceilings, regular Romans starved. Homes weren't rebuilt, markets stayed ruined, and instead of offering aid, Nero forced the public to admire his grand designs. Worse, rumors spread that Nero started the fire himself just to make room for his palace. Whether true or not, he acted like a man who benefited from disaster and then made the empire pay for it. Nero didn't just rebuild Rome, he reshaped it around himself, and in doing so, cracked the foundation of an empire already trembling under the weight of his ego. Rome loved its games. Chariot races, gladiator fights, and dramatic performances were the heartbeat of the empire. Emperors sponsored them to gain public favor. But Nero took it to a dangerous extreme. Instead of hosting games for the people, Nero made the games about himself. He didn't just attend plays, he starred in them. He didn't just enjoy music, he performed his own songs for hours on stage, forcing thousands of citizens, senators, and foreign guests to sit through endless recitals. Some were reportedly locked inside the theater, unable to leave until Nero was finished. And it wasn't cheap. Nero funded massive festivals like the Neronia, an Olympic-style event celebrating art, athletics, and, of course, Nero. He paid for elaborate sets, imported exotic animals, and hired thousands of performers. He even bribed judges to award him the victory in competitions he clearly didn't win. All this cost a fortune, but Nero didn't care. He used public funds, money meant for roads, grain, and soldiers, to feed his obsession with fame. He saw himself not as emperor, but as Rome's leading man. The economy suffered. As more money flowed into Nero's vanity projects, less went to essential services. Infrastructure crumbled, armies grew restless from unpaid wages, and famine crept closer with each extravagance. For Nero, entertainment wasn't a gift to Rome. It was a spotlight to feed his ego, no matter how much it cost the empire. When Nero's spending spiraled out of control, Rome's treasury couldn't keep up. Instead of cutting back or finding sustainable revenue, Nero made a disastrous economic decision. He tampered with the empire's money itself. In 64 AD, Nero became the first Roman emperor to intentionally debase the currency. He reduced the silver content in the denarius, the empire's standard silver coin, from 97% to 93%, and slightly decreased the weight of gold coins too. On paper, this gave the empire more coins to spend, but in reality, it shattered trust in Roman money. Merchants began to demand higher prices, knowing coins were worth less. Inflation crept into every corner of Roman life. Bread, oil, fabric, essentials skyrocketed in cost. Wages couldn't keep up. Ordinary citizens felt the squeeze, while Nero used this watered-down currency to keep funding his massive projects, his games, his palace, and his own vanity. And then came the new coinage, bearing Nero's face larger and more prominent than ever. His image grew, even as its value shrank. By undermining the integrity of Rome's currency, Nero didn't just hurt the rich. He crippled everyday commerce. Trust in Roman coinage would never fully recover, setting a precedent that future emperors would follow, with devastating consequences. In trying to save himself from bankruptcy, Nero bankrupted everyone else first. As Nero's hunger for wealth deepened, he turned to Rome's provinces, the conquered territories that formed the backbone of the empire. But instead of ruling them with fairness, Nero saw them as piggy banks he could smash open at will. To fund his endless luxuries, Nero imposed brutal taxes on provinces like Gaul, Judea, and Britannia. These weren't just normal tributes or fees. They were sudden, massive levies, often demanded without warning. Governors were ordered to collect more, faster, and to punish anyone who resisted. In some cases, landowners were forced to sell their property just to afford the tax. Farmers lost their grain stores. Local economies collapsed, and the resentment? It grew like wildfire. In Judea, the heavy taxes helped spark a full-scale Jewish revolt in 66 AD, just a few years before Nero's own downfall. In Gaul, Roman allies turned hostile, no longer willing to fund an emperor who saw them as expendable. Even Roman senators began to whisper that Nero's greed was tearing the empire apart from within. Instead of strengthening the empire through loyalty, Nero squeezed it until it bled, trading short-term gain for long-term rebellion. When Nero ran out of silver, he didn't cut back. He cheated the economy instead. In one of the earliest known acts of currency debasement, Nero reduced the silver content in Roman coins. He didn't make less money, he just made worse money. By melting down coins and reissuing them with less silver and more base metals, he tricked the empire into thinking it still had value. But merchants noticed. So did soldiers. So did foreign traders. The result? Rampant inflation. Prices for goods skyrocketed. Bread, wine, clothing, all became harder for the average Roman to afford. And yet, Nero's palace walls were coated in gold leaf. He still hosted feasts that cost more in a night than some towns earned in a year. Worst of all, this debasement shattered trust in Roman currency. Once that trust was gone, every transaction became suspect. Some provinces even started hoarding older coins or trading in raw silver and gold instead, a sign that the economy was rotting from the inside. Nero's quick fix to fund his vanity ended up poisoning the empire's entire financial system. Instead of fixing Rome's economy, Nero found a darker solution: weaponize the tax system. He unleashed a wave of brutal tax collectors, giving them nearly unchecked power. These men could barge into homes, seize property, and even auction off people's land for fabricated debts. They were feared more than bandits, because they had the emperor's blessing. Nero also revived long-forgotten taxes, some dating back 100 years, and retroactively charged citizens for them. If someone couldn't pay, they were punished, sometimes enslaved or imprisoned. The worst part? This money wasn't going to roads, defenses, or the poor. It went straight into Nero's projects: his golden house, his statues, his endless parties. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens were drowning in poverty and fear. Even the Senate, normally allies of the emperor, began to panic. They saw entire provinces crushed under financial pressure, and new rebellion was only a matter of time. This wasn't governance, it was extortion on an imperial scale, and the cracks in the empire only got wider. As Nero's spending spiraled out of control, he did the unthinkable. He looted the gods. Across the empire, temples were seen as sacred. People believed they were places of divine power, not vaults to be plundered. But Nero saw only treasure: gold statues, jeweled offerings, silver altars. They were melted down and carted off to fill his coffers. And he didn't stop at pagan temples. He raided shrines dedicated to foreign gods, including Egyptian and Eastern cults, claiming they were superstitious and that Rome had a duty to reclaim their riches. But everyone knew the truth. Nero was broke, and he was willing to risk spiritual wrath to stay rich. Even worse, Nero had the audacity to call it justice. He told the Senate he was cleansing Rome of false idols. In reality, he was bankrupting both faith and economy in one blow. People were horrified. Many believed this desecration cursed the empire, leading to floods, plagues, and failed harvests. Whether or not the gods were angry, the people certainly were, and their trust in Nero crumbled with every stolen relic. When Nero needed more cash, he didn't just raise taxes, he weaponized the law itself, turning murder into a money-making scheme. Under his reign, any wealthy Roman could be accused of treason, often with no evidence. If found guilty, which they almost always were, their land, money, and valuables were seized and funneled directly into the imperial treasury. Nero called it justice. Historians call it state-sponsored robbery. It started with his political rivals. Then it spread to philosophers, generals, poets, and aristocrats. Anyone with an estate became a target. And the best part for Nero? He didn't have to lift a finger. Informants did the dirty work, hoping for a cut of the prize. This created a reign of terror. Wealthy Romans lived in fear, hiding their riches, their opinions, even their friendships. People stopped investing. Land sat unused. Trade slowed. And Rome's economy, already fragile, started to crack. But Nero didn't stop. As long as executions brought in income, the blood kept flowing. Even his own mother wasn't safe. He turned the justice system into a piggy bank, and the empire paid the price. In 64 AD, Rome went up in flames. For 9 days, fire devoured homes, temples, and marketplaces. Thousands were left homeless. The city, once the jewel of the empire, became a smoking graveyard. And Nero? He watched it burn from his private tower, singing. While historians still debate whether he started the fire himself, one thing is clear. Nero took full advantage of the destruction. As ash still fell from the sky, he announced plans for a massive reconstruction, not for the people but for himself. At the center of this plan was the Domus Aurea, or Golden House, a palace so enormous it swallowed entire neighborhoods. It had rotating dining rooms, artificial lakes, and ceilings that rained perfume and rose petals. The cost? More than the empire could afford. To pay for it, Nero doubled taxes, seized land from survivors, and stripped every corner of the empire of its silver golden grain. Rome's economy wasn't just weakened, it was gutted. While citizens mourned their dead and starved in the streets, Nero bathed in luxury, blind to the rage building around him. That fire didn't just burn Rome, it burned away the last shreds of trust in their emperor. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. It really helps us keep bringing forgotten history back to life. Thank you, and see you in the next episode of Dark Lore.